Hello and welcome to this episode of The Art of Action Figures. I'm very excited to be bringing you an in-depth look at the Jada Toys Chun-Li from their 6-inch Street Fighter line. Chun-Li is the third figure to be released in this line. She is considered part of Wave 1, which includes the two other figures released to date, Fei Long and Ryu. Of the three, I am definitely most excited about Chun-Li. She's my main in Street Fighter 6. I've had a lot of fun playing that game. Ryu and Fei Long came in a few months earlier and set the bar very high for this Street Fighter line, so I have been very excited for Chun-Li to be released and am very glad that she is finally here. I have not had as much time with Chun-Li as I had when I put together the Art of Action Figures episode featuring Ryu. So this will be more of a first impression and discovering the capabilities and limitations of this figure in real time. But I have an idea for that. I mentioned I've been enjoying Street Fighter 6, and so I think what I'm going to do is later on in this video, we'll have a bit of a posing challenge where I pull up her Street Fighter 6 moveset and have her go head-to-head with the SH Figuarts Chun-Li, which is currently kind of the champion of 6-inch scale or 1/12 scale Chun-Li figures. Storm Collectibles also has a Street Fighter action figure line, but they have dropped the pretense of being 1/12 scale. They have always been closer to 1/10 scale, and that scale just doesn't work for my collection, so they look like good figures, but they're just not ones that I'm going to be collecting for that reason, pretty much. So I have a couple of problems with the Street Fighter Chun-Li from Figuarts, which I will get into in that later segment when we look at all of the articulation and poses. Let's see. So starting off, I want to just kind of go over the details on the figure. I think that it's very hard to capture the likeness when you're kind of chasing a moving target. I feel like Street Fighter characters have had a lot of likenesses over the years, and so similar to how Ryu is kind of essence of Ryu, I think Chun-Li similarly has the essence of Chun-Li, but doesn't really nail any particular incarnation. And I'm okay with that. I am personally not attached to a particular numbered entry in Street Fighter and that exact representation of the character. This one has the costume, the classic costume with very vibrant colors, which I like quite a lot. Her neutral face portrait here is very natural looking, I think. Her ethnicity comes across, which I really like, and I really hope action figure lines continue to improve on that front. I know it's not something everyone's the most experienced with, but I'm really happy to see Jada doing such a great job with it. Yeah, let's just take a closer look. She has some little pearl earrings, I believe. She's got her iconic hair buns. And this really, really nice goldish yellow detail on her costume all the way around. Her mid-torso here, abdomen, has some folds, which is a really nice detail as well. The costume, the blue part, has a fabric-like texture, which is really sharp and adds some dimension. She has some kind of very faint molding line on her chest there. It's not too noticeable, but it is something to note. And other things to note while I'm zoomed way in, you can see some of the yellow paint application is not precisely on the mark, but it's really tough to see it unless you are like this close looking for it. So overall, like if you look at it from kind of a typical range, typical distance, it looks really clean. It's done, as far as I can tell, everywhere it needs to be. Even up under the collar, you can see the little ring around the collar. Now, I don't know if really like the inside of the collar should be gold, but I think it looks good nevertheless. It's very interesting that if you get just the right light on her face, you can almost see like freckles. I don't know if that's just to provide some depth to the skin tone. I don't know if it's really coming across. It's very faint. Maybe you can see it on the side of her nose there. It's just a very subtle little bit of shading, I think. While we're zoomed in this close, we can see the yellow paint or gold paint around the frilly part of the buns. It's continued on the tassels. Take a look at that pattern on the back. One little blemish I can see on the front is right there inside the bang. There is just a little unpainted skin tone, but that's super hard to spot. Yeah, overall, the paint applications and details are very nice. Let's take a look at her wrist bracelets. I don't know what color these are molded in, but they appear to be painted a brownish, blackish color, but then also with these silver points. And the silver is not perfect. There's a little section of it missing just there. a little bit on the tips, but you know, these are battle gauntlets, so and you know, again, from regular distance, it's pretty hard to spot. So now, moving down, you can see the lining is around her skirt piece, and then her legs are just done in this kind of reddish brown plastic. There isn't, from what I can tell, any paint on those or on her boots. I think that those are all just molded solid plastic, and that's okay. They could go for a wash in the laces, but I honestly think this looks clean and really nice as it is. You can see that left leg wiggling just a little bit, and we'll get to that. It's partly my hand is shaking, but also she does have a couple of minor problems in the lower body, which I'll talk about when I start going over her articulation. But let's see. Next, I want to take a look at the alternate portrait. Now, this one, it can be a little strange from some angles. I don't think it's too far off the mark. I think similar to Ryu's shouting face, they've kind of scrunched up her nose and brow, and it loses some of the likeness in doing so, and you can see the difference there. She does have an alternate bang piece that's a little bit more windswept and dynamic looking. She has some really nice paint application in her open mouth. It's very cleanly done as far as I can tell, so that looks really good. Again, the pearl earrings and the yellow on her hair buns is continued on this head sculpt as well. Maybe a little bit of brown overpaint, but that isn't really noticeable unless you are shining light straight at it like I am here. Yeah, if you pull it back a little bit, you can not tell. So, not bad. Like I said, something is lost in the likeness between these two portraits. But I'm glad that we have a dynamic shouting face to complement fighting poses. The other accessories are an alternate pair of hands with flat open palms, and I think I'll probably swap these on and use them for the posing section. Her fighting style tends to have her hands posed like this more often than fists, so really good inclusion of these. And then finally, this stand, which I was using to display the alternate head, is not actually meant for that, so we're just going to put that aside. It just helps me to show it without getting my hand in the way. It is meant for this effect piece, which is her lightning kicks effect. So there is a little hole at the bottom of this, and it is a softer plastic similar to Fei Long's flame kick effect. So you can see it's kind of squishy there. The peg itself is a bit larger than the hole. And so I find the best way to attach it so far is to squish this just a little bit and to kind of try to keep this in focus, but basically push that in at an angle and have it about like that. So let's go ahead and swap the hands, head, and put her into the effect part so you can see how that works. Both sets of hands have a horizontal hinge, which works well for this character. These wrist gauntlets are separate from the forearm. One thing I didn't note about the forearm, and I'm just noticing, you actually do get some skin tone shading on the muscles there. Again, it's quite faint, but it is there. So that is nice. It stands out more in person than on camera, and I think it's for the better. So I'll see if I can get pictures of it later on. But the gauntlets are also removable. I'm not going to remove them because I am worried about the paint rubbing off onto the forearm. You can see a little bit of a plastic seam line there, maybe. But I think some of that skin tone shading might be visible. It's really subtly darker on the bulge of her forearm muscle there. You can see I took this gauntlet off earlier, and there's just a little bit of a smudge there. So I'm probably not going to do that again, but that's okay. Okay, and then to swap her head, I usually try to grab it by the ears because I want to be careful not to pull the hair buns. These are softer, separate plastic, and they seem to be glued into the top of the head, similar with her front bang. So you want to avoid pulling on those, and so I try to grab cheek, ear area on both sides of her head, and then also put another finger kind of behind the back of the head, and with those three, pull up and throw it across the room. Yeah. Just kidding, it's right here. Everything's fine. Okay, and then you can see just a ball peg there. And she's saying lightning kick. So let's get the action set up here. Lightning kick pose is kick out to the side. Probably want her kind of 50-50 leg split. Maybe a little more if you want to get really dynamic with it. And then this arm points back. And then this one bring across, I believe, like that. And then this has actually 3 different slots depending on the height of the leg. You get the idea. Like that. And I think that works really nicely. So I'll try to get the pose accuracy a little better later, but that's probably good enough for now. Now I am gonna swap the other head back on just for the rest of the review. And so that way she doesn't look so angry while we're just showing how tall the figure is and so on. So for your scale comparisons, there's Chun-Li just standing straight. Here is Fei Long, Ryu. So you get an idea how they scale together. Let me put them all in the same mat here. Get Ryu to stop leaning forward. So just a little bit shorter than Fei Long and Ryu, which I think is appropriate and looks really good. Here's how she scales compared to Figuarts Chun-Li. They're actually very, very close in height. It is almost exactly the same. Some different proportions for sure, but height-wise, I think they could go very well together. Now, the Figuarts Street Fighter line is not known for its excellent accuracy with regard to scale, but Chun-Li is one of the better scaled figures. So next, if you are like me and you're a fan of Marvel vs. Capcom, I'm going to pull out some Marvel Legends. Here is the VHS Chun-Li Cyclops on the Vulcan body, which is kind of your standard tall buff guy body. I think that looks really good. Like I said, this is like your super tall but still like a normal sized human Marvel Legends male body. And then on the ladies side we have Jean, who is going to be getting a video in the near future. Okay. This Jean Grey figure has some horrendous legs. They are so wobbly. Chun-Li has a bit of wobble as well, so that's not making it easier. Again, like I said, I'll explain what's going on there as best I can in a moment. For now, let's just kind of check out the height. Jean Grey is not wearing heels, but she is almost as tall as Cyclops. He's got about a nose height on her. So she's fairly tall, but I think that scales relatively well. And I think that's everything. So, onto the articulation. And the shoulder joints, I knew that she wasn't going to have butterfly joints based on some pre-release interviews with Jun from the action figure team at Jada, where he basically said as much. So I'm curious to see how well she can hit the Kikoken pose, which has kind of similar requirements to the Hadoken. For Ryu, it's Chun-Li's fireball attack. Her hands do not go one over the other like with Hadoken, though. They go side by side, kind of like this. So she can probably get away with no butterfly joints and still do it convincingly. But we'll give that a shot very soon here. Other than that, the articulation and range of motion are pretty much identical to what we saw with Ryu. And I'll just go through the rundown really quickly. Starting off with the neck joints, let me pop their heads off again so you can get a good look here. Ryu has a ball between the neck and torso, and then a double ball at the top of the neck that goes up into the head. And that gives him some really good 360 range of motion. So he can tilt like a lot. He can look down pretty good amount. He looks up a decent amount, but the really nice thing is like the tilt and the subtle kind of looking down to the side at an angle. Chun-Li's joint is different. And I'm not really sure if it's just like they couldn't make a ball peg that was small enough but like strong enough to go under the neck here, but the neck, you can see it, is on a hinge between the torso and lower neck, and I don't think there's any kind of swivel. At least it's not going to move on mine, and I'm not going to force it too hard. And then at the top, there's another ball where the head connects, and it looks like there could be a hinge here, but I don't think there actually is. I think it's just a ball peg on top of the neck that's on a hinge. And so the ball peg offers a little bit of tilt just rolling on the ball, but because there's no peg or no ball at the lower neck, she doesn't quite get the same amount of tilt as Ryu. So that was a little disappointing to discover. Her ability to look down and up is fairly good. Well, it's decent. I don't think it's impaired. Well, it's definitely not impaired by her hair buns. They are, like I said, a softer material, and so they will just bend out of the way. Let's get her looking up and standing straight up. And then here's Ryu. So they're really comparable. She might even be a little bit able to look up just a little farther than Ryu. And then down, also is very comparable. Okay, next thing, I mentioned no butterfly joints at the shoulders. So what that means is there's just, you can see this disc, and that is part of a hinge that allows the arm to hinge up and down into a sort of T-pose. And then there's a peg that allows swivel, but there's no kind of like ball joint inside the torso that lets you kind of rock the shoulder around or bring the arm across the chest. And so what that means is if you push the shoulder that way, it allows you to maximize the range on that disc, and I'll show you how far she brings the arms across the chest when I do that. So here's, if I just do it kind of nonchalantly, it might look like it only goes that far, but if I put some care into what I'm doing and understand that like this hinge needs as much room as possible in the front to be able to let the arm hinge that way, you push it towards her back just a little bit and it gives you a little bit more range. So it's not butterfly joint range, but it is straight ahead. So that's as good as it can be, really, without butterflies or big cuts in the torso. And with that like detail on her costume right there, I can understand why they elected to keep that seamless. And you can also see, I believe June's comment was there's just no room. And it's definitely a very narrow shoulder, like front to back. So I think that might be what he's referring to there. But those are the major differences. Now, the good news is the rest of the articulation matches all of the great articulation that Ryu had. So, and possibly better in some places. Her bicep swivel, for example, is really nicely hidden under her sleeve. She has double hinge elbows that get all the range that they possibly can before her spikes run into her sleeve. If you took the spikes off, they would go even further. And they look really, really good. Like that's a good shape for an elbow. It's more organic looking to me than, well, if I only bend Ryu's elbow that same amount, see, it's a bit more rounded. So that works really well. Wrists have hinge and swivel. Horizontal hinges on both sets of hands. And the torso joint is great. She has the upper ball between the chest and the abdomen, and that gives really good range. It gives rotation as well. It's not a ton of range, but it adds to the excellent range at the lower abdomen waist ball. That's where most of your range comes from, and then you get a little extra from the top. But you can see, let's put her arms out like that, and you can get the exact angle that she's able to tilt. Actually, this arm, there we go. So that is excellent. I'm very happy that they took advantage of this costume design, which gives her kind of an optimistic sized abdomen, but I suppose she is a martial artist who never skips leg day. Ryu's tilt is not quite as dramatic with the gi. Fei Long with no gi. Let's see. Is pretty similar. I think he's just lagging behind if you look at the angle of the arms, but really close. So Chun-Li wins the torso articulation, which is really nice. I'll just show the ab crunch forward. Bring the arms forward to demonstrate that range, and you want to keep the line on top of the skirt straight when you do this, so you can really just crunch the torso. Nope. Come on now. This is a really tricky pose to balance given the problem I have on her left knee. Nope. Use the environment to your advantage. Okay, and then here is compared to Ryu. So, really comparable ab crunch. And then going back is ridiculous. Look at that. That's great. She's got to hit some very dynamic leg and torso poses, so that's wonderful. Now onto the legs, which I'm a little bit disappointed. I've got a couple of problems with, one problem on each leg, which if it seems like I'm struggling to balance her through this video, it's for one of these two reasons. Number one, the top hinge on the left knee is completely loose between neutral and bent one position back. If I bend it one position back, it's good. But just in that first slot on this kind of clicky hinge joint, it is very wobbly. I think there are some suggested fixes for that type of issue out there, so I'll do a little bit of research and try to report back if I can do something about this, or see if Jada can I don't really know if they would send like a replacement leg, but yeah, that makes it really difficult for her to balance, unfortunately. And then the second problem I have on the right leg, and this one is not really a stability problem, but it is in the hip joint itself. So these are on the same kind of ball peg as Ryu. They get perfect split to the side. It's when I kick them forward. This one kicks really well. Now ignore the knee, it's going to droop. But that one gets up 90 degrees, and then probably a bit more. Again, this waist piece is soft, so it gets out of the way pretty well. The problem is on the right leg, the fit is just, it seems a little bit off, and I've put some shock oil in there, so it is gonna have a shiny appearance, unfortunately, but it was too tight when it arrived, so I put the shock oil, and it's moving now, but the problem is it feels like the peg is twisting when I do it. So as I move her leg up, you can see it kind of wants to go back a little bit. Like it resists my torque by twisting and then twisting back when I release it. I'm concerned about it because I think over time there's a good chance that we'll just twist off. And so I don't know. I will monitor it, I guess, but I'm a little worried moving this leg. Okay. I think that is both of the issues with the hips out of the way, or the right hip, left knee. The knees are double hinge, and again, the top hinge on her left knee is quite loose. The other one is quite tight, and so it makes it, oh man, a little challenging. I didn't mention, but it's probably obvious by now, her skirt is soft, so it gets out of the way. So she can kick up a good amount. The knee actually holds its shape pretty well. There is a swivel at the top of the boot, and then standard hinge lets her point her feet quite far, so that's wonderful because she needs to do that. And then hinges forward a good amount. Rock is kind of steep, but if you swivel the boot, it can be adjusted. So no complaints about the ankles, just that knee and this hip. One thing I didn't show is she needs to do a front back split for the spinning bird kick and a couple other poses, and similar to Ryu, you gotta kind of rotate the waist a little bit, but it works just fine when you do that. So I am happy about that.